This week on the podcast, we're joined by our good friend Renditionzz, who helps us relive the horrors of Dead Space. The U.S. government is calling for changes in App Store practices, and stick around until the end of the show for deals of the week. All that and more in this week's episode of the podcast. Rolling the intro. All right, Danny, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. The internet is kind of poo-poo, and I am very much struggling with it still.
Catching these hands.
I should also mention that I relocated.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not at my usual place, and I am very much struggling with that.
Oh, it's fine. Everything's fine. It's fine. All right. Am I full on leading this episode or what?
Let's go, Captain.
So. I think just by the simple fact that I can't seem to get more than a couple sentences through without the.
Honestly, I think it was just the intro itself was cursed, because you talking now is just fine.
Yeah, I think it's impressive that anytime anything of actual substance that you have to say, then it starts breaking.
They don't want me. They want to censor me. They want to stop me from saying what's really important. Dude. Exactly.
Better all ace.
It's all conspiracy, man. It's all conspiracy. So, this week on the podcast, we are joined by the beautiful and wonderful Renditionzz. Welcome back in.
Oh, hey,
tell us about yourself.
Me.
For anyone who doesn't know about you.
Oh,
tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I play games. I'm a nerd. I also achievement hunt. I play a lot of games on hardest difficulties and stuff. I do all sorts of things. How's it going, guys? How you guys doing? It's been forever.
It's been a minute, yeah.
And
then
the last time we had you on, Ren?
That's a great question. It's been at least a year, I think.
It has been over a year. It was our anniversary, one of our anniversary streams from 2020.
Yeah, I think so. That sounds right.
Maybe 2021.
Yeah. Damn.
It's been a hot minute though. But of course, we are also joined by the beautiful bearded beauty that is Mendacii. Mendacii, how you doing?
Hi, yeah, it's me. I'm here with my security cage. And,
I was just about to ask if you have a Nicolas Cage pillow.
Oh yeah,
I do. And we're gonna talk about scary things, and I don't want him to see that, so I'm just gonna go ahead and hide his eyes. And that's what I have for you this week. Thank you for the introduction, Green.
Avert your gaze.
No, that's very respectable.
Coming in remotely from a new and an interesting place, Danny. How you doing, baby boy? How's the internet holding up?
So far it's okay. We'll see. As we go along here, it really seems like anytime I have anything real to say, they're gonna shut me down.
Oh yeah.
So, maybe subscribe to YouTube so that you guys can us in all of our glory. Right? They don't want
glory.
I just
want you to subscribe.
First, you literally tried to say subscribe and it cut you off right there. It was like, nah, I don't think so. It's fancy word, not allowed.
I think that legally speaking, we should just say disregard anything that you may have heard Danny say. It did seem fairly promiscuous? ? I don't know what he wants you to do to us, but he does want you to do something to us.
Danny K. Racist confirmed? ?
Wow.
Do not start that rumor. We will never hear the 11,
right out the gate, dude.
Oh no. All right. Thank you for watching and listening to the show. Be sure to stick around until the end of the show to hear about some awesome deals we found for you this week. And of course, if you miss any of the show, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and everywhere podcasts are found. Of course, you can join us live on Twitch every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the housekeeping. Mendacii, Ren, I hear you guys have some space to talk about Dead Space, huh?
Yo, yeah.
I'm Danny today.
Danny Daddy Puns K.
Yo.
Anyway, so about Dead Space, right? That's a game that we played. Yeah, no, it's actually been super good. I've already beat it. I'm trying to get all the achievements in it, which means I had to beat the game like 3 or 4 times. It's gonna be forever. But overall, it's been fun. It's been a great time. It's. I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. It's a very faithful remake, whereas you have like other remakes, say something like RE3. For example, RE3 remake is like somewhat faithful, but definitely like goes onto its own little like area, right? The Dead Space remake is very similar to the original Dead Space, which is great. Because honestly, the original Dead Space has aged considerably well, given the fact that it's been out for what, like 15 years, something like that, 14, 15 years. Yeah, the only things that I really cared about that needed to be worked on were all things that they really like put a focus on. The atmosphere is incredible. It's surprisingly good. The audio quality and design of it is superb. And a lot of the most frustrating points of the game, for the most part, got overhauled to at least be reasonable to play through, right? So for
looking at you, chapter 4, obliteration imminent.
Yeah, exactly. God. Right. There are certain chapters, especially the one that involves the turret section from the OG Dead Space, that a lot of people despise. There's an entire turret section that you have to like try to break asteroids. If you mess up, it's just a bad time. It's not even a fun time. It really like breaks off from the gameplay in a completely different way that you don't really want in the OG Dead Space. They decided to completely overhaul that entire section so that way you now actually go outside of the ship and you're actually like actively trying to program these turrets to actually shoot them down instead. It's essentially still the same sort of thing, but way more efficient and it's just more fun. It's way more interactive. I think that's the biggest thing to say about it. That was probably the worst segment that I remember being in Dead Space 1. But yeah, a lot of things for the most part just got a really good like touch up. I think the only thing, at least to me, that I think was kind of lacking, which I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, the boss fights in Remake are kind of basic. I feel like they're pretty easy to do just in general, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but I definitely think they probably could have like upped the ante a little bit more when it came to the boss fights. Overall,
they
loved it.
They were like gimmicky. Like, yeah,
yeah,
use your kinesis, grab the flame, like the explosive barrel, throw it in, it blows up, grab the thing that's about to get shot at you, throw it away. All right, repeat until it oozes and dies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't know, it might just be me because I play like a lot of like difficult games inherently, so I'm probably just super biased on it, but it felt very easy to like read and understand what the boss fight was going to be, like not that far into it. So it was like, for example, you run into the boss fight that you're talking about, which is the one like food storage or whatever. It happens pretty like in the middle stages of the game. It only has like 2 different attacks, realistically speaking. It only does like 2 different things. The initial moment that you see, it's really cool, and I actually like really praise that about it. The entire set piece of the moment is really interesting. It's just the boss fight itself doesn't really hold up to kind of the atmosphere that the rest of the game brings in. Absolutely. Right? I think that's a big thing, at least for me. I know I'm hard carrying this though, so yeah, I would love to hear what you like want to talk about, man. I'm curious.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of going back to what you had said about Resident Evil 3 as far as remakes go. The Resident Evil remakes have been, a huge splash the past couple of years. For sure. I had just recently, I think it was about a week or 2 ago, I went through and played through Resident Evil 2 remake and RE3 remake back to back, just on a whim, waiting for Dead Space remake. And it kind of hit me like Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil 2, very much so survival horror games. Resident Evil 3 a little bit more actiony because you have a lot more stuff to use. But RE3 is 100% an action game. Like Resident Evil 3 remake is an action game, dude. You have a dodge mechanic. You have like enough ammo that you can run around with a shotgun if you really want to and just blow brains everywhere. Dead Space to me was like you can play it a lot of different ways. Namely, like if you go one gun and you just use the plasma cutter, you max that boy out, you throw everything else to the wayside, and you'll never be wanting for ammo because the game is very intuitive as to what it likes to give you. Otherwise, sometimes you'll get like contact beam ammo, which is great because it's worth a lot of money. But like,
Yeah.
playing it like that, it's kind of funny. You'd think that you would be at a disadvantage only carrying one gun, but the plasma cutter is such a phenomenal gun. And it already at base just kind of outshined every gun in that original game. In the remake, however, I'm hard pressed to like keep four guns on me. And the fact that they took out the node doors, always having to keep a power node on you in order to get into like a secret storage room, taking that out completely so that you could focus on upgrading your guns, your suit, or what have you, was such a cool idea. On top of also adding in gun parts, things like actuators or I guess be like choke for the pulse rifle is like one of the first things that you can get, and
Yeah.
ultimately you can make those guns that felt like trash in the original, great guns in the remake, giving you actual reason to use anything like aside from the plasma cutter, which is still a phenomenal weapon in that it improves on several mechanics of the original while also delivering that whole original. So to me personally, it really does feel like Resident Evil 1 Remake's answer to any of the problems or like just the low audience numbers of the original Resident Evil or Resident Evil Director's Cut. It feels that intuitive.
Yeah. I honestly think you actually make a really good point about the weapon system, though. I completely glossed over this, but in the original Dead Space, whenever you try to get a weapon, you can't find the weapon. You have to actively go to a store and you have to spend money to purchase it, which inherently just kind of makes it a barrier, right? You're playing a survival horror game. Money's really important. Having the ability to heal or having ammo is a huge thing. And sometimes just chalking up the money for a gun that you haven't even gotten the chance to use feels like a really bad thing to do. Like, it feels inherently like a bad decision. Like chalking up, say, like 20k credits when you instead you could buy like 4 med kits, and then you get the weapon and it's not even leveled up or upgraded, right? It inherently feels like you're just wasting money. It doesn't feel like a good situation. And honestly, the remake does a really good job of it. Instead of ever buying the weapons, all of the weapons that are in the game, you actively find around the map. They are never a thing that you have to buy. There are occasionally upgrades that you can buy, but an overwhelming majority amount of the upgrades are not purchasable. You find them around the map as well, right? And in a lot of situations, when you find these weapons, it puts you in an environment where you're inclined to use it, right? So say, for example, you get the flamethrower. The first enemy that you run into after you get the flamethrower is a bunch of tiny enemies. A bunch of tiny enemies that would make no sense to use like accuracy for. Right? So obviously you're going to want to use the flamethrower for it. And then from that, you get to decide, okay, is the weapon good or not? Do I want to use it or do I just want to like put it away? And you have that option from there. I actually really, really appreciate that about the remake, because I agree. When I played Dead Space 1, I think the only weapons I ever used was the plasma cutter, because it gives it to you, and the line gun. And that was basically it. Like, I didn't really use anything else, because why would I want to spend the money for a weapon I don't think is going to even work? Like, I don't know if it's going to work the way I want it to. Say I get like the Ripper, which is essentially a chainsaw, right? I get the chainsaw, and then I realize this isn't doing enough damage for me because I've already leveled up my other weapons enough. Like, there's no point there. And to be honest, that issue kind of still stands with the remake, but that's kind of an inherent thing when you have like certain weapons in certain areas, right? Say you have the force gun in like chapter 7, right? You're already going to have a few guns before that point, and you're probably going to be like, I don't think it's really worth using this weapon. I've already put so many like upgrades in my other weapons. Should I use this right now? I feel like that's probably like the one weakness in terms of the weapon system right now. But honestly, that's not even like a weakness for the weapon system. That's just kind of how it works in a game like that, right? I think that's not that big of a deal, but it's something to note. Overall,
Absolutely.
overall, though, I really like the weapons. And the one thing I actually didn't even interact with, but I think it's worth mentioning, in the original, all the weapons pretty much have a damage type, right? They all kind of just do one thing each, right? So the chainsaw just chops things up, no big deal. The force gun just blasts people away, right? But in the remake, all of the weapons have an alternate fire mode, which can do all sorts of different things, right? So the pulse rifle, which in the original used to be notoriously bad, it was just something people didn't use. Now it's proximity mine.
Weak.
Yeah, you do now have a proximity mine as an option, right? I didn't actually use it, but I kind of wish I did. I wish that I interacted with that system a little bit more, because I think it would have been pretty interesting to
Do you know?
have
Do you
tactical
remember
options
what
there.
it did? Do you remember what it did in the original?
I don't know. I feel
It turned
like I
into
remember
a
it.
bullet sprinkler. You stand below it, and it spreads out like a flower and spins and shoots bullets in all directions. But it doesn't do enough stagger damage.
Right.
And it doesn't do enough damage at all in general to actually stop enemies from just coming over to you and mauling you, surrounding you, and absolutely destroying you. The you had the line gun had the super awesome basically like proximity mines, like little
Right.
balls that would attach, and like that was good because it would literally obliterate things. Contact beam had like big explosion. And then force gun was just like you like point it at the ground, it just does like the shockwave. Like they were basic, but like this, what you were getting at is like the guns feel unique now.
Yeah, they feel unique, and you feel like you have tactical options available if you want them. You don't need them. Like, I went through the entire game without even acknowledging the existence of the proximity mine. But if I was like maybe a more defensive player, right, setting up mines is a really cool like method of protecting yourself from that sort of thing. It's a cool way of feeling smart as a player to be like, yeah, I set up a method that I can deal with this problem safely, right? I think that's great. I think that's really, honestly, just really good. I really wish I gave that system more of a chance. I really didn't interact with it pretty much ever, and I feel like I kind of missed out on doing so. I wish I did.
Yeah. There's like, when we were talking about how the game does like end up giving you the guns, like, in this versus the other one, I believe you picked up schematics for everything other than the pulse rifle. And then you would put it in the store, and then you would have the option to purchase them.
Yeah.
And most of the time you're just kind of like, I mean, I could buy this, but I don't know exactly how this is going to look or how fast it's going to be able to get to a level in which it'll be helpful at this juncture in the game. There's a lot of different enemy types and enemies that do get progressively more difficult as the story goes on, as you would want in any general story, to actually kind of feel like you're seeing some diversity in your mobs. And when you're talking about like, this force gun, super cool, thanks for giving it to me, but like I've already put all of my eggs in these like other, by that time I think 5 or 6 baskets, beforehand. So how good is this thing off the bat? It's definitely something that I think is more an issue of just like how linear games were back in 2000, the aughts, like the late aughts. Most games were like, here's a corridor. I really feel like this remake has done a lot of good to kind of reshape, or at least kind of reconfigure the idea of like a corridor. We've got the new mechanic in which you can just activate your zero grav suit and just maneuver around zero gravity like areas, which was just insane to me, rather than like the weird topsy-turvy, like, the jumps, the zero G jumps, and you would just fly around like a frog. Like that was insane. The redoing of like so many different rooms, adding like little puzzles here and there, like maybe you have to look through a busted window, move a box, shoot something that was hidden. Like these little things are very intuitive, regardless of their simplicity, and they remix the entire experience. And something that you and I were talking about that I really want to get into before we carry on too long was how well they kind of resurrected, if you will, the actual like ambient nature of being on the Ishimura.
Yeah.
It's terrifying, man.
Yeah.
I was sweating like the first time that like I sat down and played through the first 4 chapters. I was like, my heart's going crazy. I know that you on stream, it literally had like the heart rate monitor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, woo.
Yeah, at times it was hitting like 100, like multiple times, and it was like, Jesus fucking Christ. I honestly, I think the quote from like I want to say like movie development, I think is actually a really good point here. But in movie development, like there's a semi-common point that people make of like, if you could take a screenshot from a movie and that like looks great, you probably have a really good movie. And that's honestly the way it works in Dead Space. You can go to any room in Dead Space and every room is terrifying. Every single room is a nightmare. You go from one room and like it might even look okay, but even the acknowledgement of like, yeah, this room looks fine considering the entire place is a nightmare landscape, that in itself actually is like in its own little bit of horror, right? But you'll go from there into another room that is just painted red with blood. And it's like,
Yeah.
all right, that's cool. Yeah, no, love this. I think a really good example, there's honestly so many good examples about the atmosphere, but I think one really good example of it actually ties in with a puzzle element. So in the remake, they added a couple new puzzles that are essentially tied to fuses that operate doors, right? So you have the option when you're trying to like open a door, there's the option to take power away from something to add power to something else, right?
My God.
So an example of this is you can take away the oxygen from a room, and it makes the game a little bit harder to power the door, or you can take away the lighting. You can completely shut off all the lights in the area and then break the door that way, and it turns the rest of the area like just pitch black. I think that's a really cool mechanic, and if I'm gonna be completely honest, I wish it was like really dived in more. It's done a few times, but it kind of gets left back a little bit later into the game. I really wish that was like dived in much more, because I thought that was an awesome like method of giving the player choice to something that doesn't even initially seem scary. The example I was gonna give was at some point you end up in a like a greenhouse, right? And the sound is like nice. It's like birds chirping. It's not that big of a deal. And then you find a panel that opens doors, and one of the fuses is active for ambience in the room. And so you're like, oh yeah, sure. I'll turn off the ambience. I'll set up the other door. You turn off the ambience, and the room just goes silent. Absolutely silent. And that doesn't seem that scary, but just pure nothingness in a room that like that is like, I want it back on. I'll take just only one door power. I'll do it. That's fine with me. I'm leaving the sounds on. I want the mild calmness of some birds chirping, please. For the love of God. It surprised me how like something not even that scary. Like if you look at it in like its own little element, that's not that scary, right? But if you compare it to everything else, it's horrifying. The idea that there's just nothing. There's absolutely nothing. And then the realization that, oh yeah, I'm in space. There's nothing here. It's zero. There's nothing here. I really liked that. And the other thing that I actually didn't even know that was in the game until recently. I beat the game and I was looking into it a little bit more. There's an AI director that's actually playing in the background. That's kind of like analyzing what you're doing and doing certain things accordingly, right? So if you're just breezing through the game, it's going to naturally make it harder. And this isn't something new, right? Left 4 Dead had this, right? This isn't something super new. But another element of it is fear. It actually like kind of evaluates fear. And if you've been going through rooms that like don't seem that scary, you start to run into much more intense rooms, right? For example, I was clearing through the game. I was doing fine. I was like, oh yeah, I need to go backtrack, get a thing. I went to the beginning of the game where you get the plasma cutter. The room was filled with smoke, and all I heard was like demons. And I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. I used to feel safe here, and now this is the worst thing ever. I want to go somewhere else, anywhere else, please.
Yeah, can you have you caught the heart rate like that, like the actual like heartbeat sound?
Yes.
That starts up when like things start getting really fucked up for him. Like you'll go into a bathroom, it'll like start out, and then like you'll look at a toilet and it's just sprawled in like marker language and there's blood everywhere, and like maybe you pick up an audio log and they're, you know, it's just like
Yeah.
they're trying to restrain someone who's like literally pulling their teeth out with like pliers. And you
Yeah.
go around the corner and you're like looking through lockers and it's getting louder, and all of a sudden like all the showers turn on at once for no reason. And Isaac's just sitting there like you're like, yeah, dude, me too. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think one of my more favorite moments of realization was there's two different moments. There's a moment where you go into a room, it's pitch black darkness, and like it's a little bloody, but you don't think that much about it. And then you see like an area covered with boxes, and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna move the boxes. Maybe there's something back there. And there's an audio log back there, and the audio log is talking about how they were shoving somebody into one of these store things where you normally put on your armor. They were shoving the person into it to murder them. And the reason why the room is coated red is because the guy literally got crushed to death into basically just a paste that's now covered the room. And you're just like, oh, I use that constantly. That is my safest place I feel, is when I'm in that room. That's a good feeling. That's great. And then one other moment where I thought it was funny. I was making fun of the situation at first, where like the guy had no arms, or he had one arm and no legs. And I was like, what the fuck was this guy doing? I find an audio log, and the audio log is talking about how he actively chopped off his arms and legs to like not kill his family. And it's like, oh, well, thanks for
Ouch.
ruining that moment of me making fun of you.
Yeah, like
Ow.
one of the most heroic people in all of Dead Space lore, that guy right there. No
Yeah.
legs Larry. Like
Yeah.
that was I think my final point that I have on it, other than like obviously like there's really great things. There's
Mhm.
one other great thing I want to bring up before like getting into the kind of technical aspect here. But the other great thing is that I was a little apprehensive about going back and immediately on the remake being able to have like Isaac walking around at moments, like taking off his helmet, he's having direct conversations with people, so on and so forth. But actually it did so much to paint the character.
It was a
And
very
the-
welcome addition. Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah. Like obviously like he talks plenty and we see his face plenty in Dead Space 2 and even the not worthy of being talked about Dead Space 3, but like to actually have this, it kind of got me thinking like there are tons of people that never played Dead Space from 2008, and the fact that they get this as like their first entry in, they get like a recognizable protagonist who like talks, has opinions, and you know like actually responds when you're, you know, shooting stuff, kind of like they did in Resident Evil 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Where like if you're shooting down a necromorph, he'll be like, son of a bitch, fuck, shit, and like just like trying to like cut off their limbs, or like, you know, like die already. And it's like that's pretty cool. I like that because it makes you feel like Home Dog is actually there, and you're not just like piloting like a faceless protag, you know, through a horror landscape, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
That's still a no for
Initially,
me,
when-
dog. It's still a no for me. What, 20 years later or so? Like, when
Just
was the first
about
Dead Space? Like, it's
15
like,
years ago.
It was a no for me then. It's a no for me now.
Yeah. Initially, I was actually pretty skeptical on it. I've grown to like the like no talking Isaac quite a bit. Like I guess just out of not like I guess it is a bit of bias, but just from like memories. I remember really enjoying him as a character, even if he didn't talk. And I remember being like, this is fine. Like, I don't think it's necessary. And the more I got into the game, the more I was like, actually, you know what? I kind of take it back. Like, I realize that maybe I was wrong on this. I initially was like, I don't think it matters if he talks. But then after he started like discussing things and like actually sounding like a human, I guess that was probably the biggest thing I was concerned about, was him not sounding like an actual person and maybe just sounding like I gotta go do this thing, right? I guess that's what I was concerned about. But no, everything that he talks about.
Do gotta fix these trains.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly,
where the fuck is Nicole at? Where the fuck are you guys at? This sucks. Fuck. And it's just like, yeah, that's what a person would probably sound like in this situation.
Yeah, it sounded way more natural than I thought it was going to. And I'm really grateful for that. I think it's a great entry if somebody has not played any of the Dead Space and they want to get into it. Like I would absolutely recommend this over the original, at least me personally. I like the original, don't get me wrong, but I really do think the lighting and the atmosphere just absolutely like make this one for sure. It reminds me a lot of RE2 Remake. RE2 Remake was one of my favorite games ever. And it's really up there in terms of survival horror for me. It's way up there. At least Remake is for sure. And the original is really good, don't get me wrong, but the lighting, like you see everything. Like it might be scary, but like you know what's around you. Like it's not that spooky. But the second that you end up in true pitch black darkness and you can't see a thing, that's when it's like, oh god. This is what I signed up for.
Vulnerability right there.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much you have as far as health goes, or how many like bullets you've been stockpiling, you still feel vulnerable. And that right there is the like a king mark as far as survival horror for me goes. And then just like constantly being worried, like, when's the next time that I find a room that I can catch my fucking breath? And Dead Space does so well to keep that stress at an enjoyable level and teetering over the edge.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you have anything in closing before we move to like technical aspect here?
Yeah. Just like the one closing thing I guess I'd have to say is a lot of horror games give you a lot of time between spooks, right? That's a very common thing. And the reason behind that is to essentially build an amount of anxiety in you. The remake does a really interesting thing where it doesn't give a fuck about that. It won't like space out things in between. You can go from a scare and be like, okay, well, there's surely not gonna be a scare like 3 steps away. And then you run into another scare and you're like, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable. I thought it was a really unique take on it. When every other game, like you play any horror game nowadays, and like there's at least going to be 30 seconds of like you being fine after a scare. There will at least be that. But in Dead Space, that's not the case. It can be literally like 2 steps away that there's another thing.
And then 20 minutes later.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost random. It feels just like you don't know. You really don't know. But yeah, overall, it's really good. I recommend it. At least if you can't afford it, and I think that's fair, it's on EA Pass. That's what I played it on. I played it on the EA Pro Pass. And for $15, that's not bad, dude. That's totally reasonable.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would definitely recommend that.
Yeah, it's looking like it's on at least on Steam for $59.99. And then it was the official release date was January 27th of this year for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, and also PC. Minimum specs are interesting, to say the least. I mean, it requires Windows 10 64-bit, a Ryzen 5 2600X or a Core i5 8600. Requires 16 gigs of RAM, AMD RX 5700 or GTX 1070 with DirectX version 12, and it requires 50 gigs of available storage space. However, there is a note in Steam that says that it should be a 50 gig SATA SSD at least.
Yes.
So
yeah,
a big asterisk there. Make sure that you're running it on an SSD or an NVMe, which is interesting because that's like the first time I've seen a game this size, like minimum specs requiring like a 2600 Ryzen. So that's
it's
interesting.
It's definitely beautiful. Like you might not see a lot, but the quality is definitely there in terms of like detail. I think it's really well detailed, and I'm honestly not that surprised that the specs are where they're at, if I'm going to be honest. And I'm kind of surprised that more games don't encourage the use of SSDs. It kind of blows me away, especially when it comes to Dead Space, because Dead Space doesn't have load times. There's no loading screens really between any points. The closest load screen that you're going to get is traveling from one place to another on a tram, but actually the game's still playing during that time. It's not like, it's similar to maybe like God of War's Tree, where you kind of just sit in a room and you just do whatever for a little bit. But the game is still like actively playing during that time. It's not like you're realistically just sitting there waiting for an area to load. things are still happening. Horror is still occurring during that time. So yeah, I don't know. I guess at least nowadays, I feel like an SSD is just where you should
Well,
be at. Maybe that's just me.
This is the first time I've seen SSD on minimum required specs versus
Yeah.
like I mean you'll see it a lot with like the recommended. Like
Sure.
for this game's recommending a Ryzen 5 5600 or higher, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And for the additional like a memory, it says like best on like a PCIe compatible SSD like an NVMe.
Yeah.
So like you'll see that a lot, just like for the minimum being like SSD it. That's definitely saying something.
Yeah, 2 notes is that
Yeah.
on the Xbox Series S, it was actually like there was a lot of complaints. A lot of people were not having a great time. There's a lot of performance drops. And there has been a patch since, which a lot of people are saying that like it's better. But the PS5 apparently on performance mode got hit the hardest, where some things were just exceptionally jagged and messed up. If you are playing on a hard drive, you're fine. The game will tell you, like with a warning screen when you load in, it's like, hey, just so you know, this game was created with the use of an SSD in mind. So
Mhm.
you might see some junk. Now, personally, I'm playing on an HD. So like there were a couple things. I was telling Ren before the show,
Yeah.
like I had one room that needed to like load in. I at one point opened up a set of doors. The hallway was like cluttered with stuff, which like all of a sudden kind of like dropped. But I mean, that's not, too crazy. And then all of a sudden 2 necromorphs were also like, we're gonna eat your face. But like there's been nothing that has stopped me from playing the game. Like there's been nothing that has crashed. My game has not crashed. I have not gotten in sticky situations because of performance. I have not had anything that has degraded my actual experience. There's just been things that like I have seen in, every other AAA game or quadruple A game, like the past 10 years. There's nothing to, really be like super upset about. Obviously, issues on systems did sound like they were pretty bad. I personally, on a PC, roundabouts the minimum spec, a little bit above it, didn't encounter anything super crazy.
All right. Danny, do you have anything before we move on?
No, these guys answered all of my questions.
All right.
Stellar.
Nailed it.
Yeah. All right. So are we free to move on then? I would assume.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else off the top of your head?
I'm
Under
good.
space.
All right. Cool. Still not gonna buy it. So yeah, call us from the feds to change App Store practices. Danny, do you want to try to get this out or no?
Oh, nope. No.
Never mind.
Bit here. So, no.
No.
Okay,
No.
go for it.
Danny, no. So there's now been calls from the U.S. government for Google and Apple to change their App Store policies. Our source on this is James Batchelor over at Game Industry Biz. So go check out that article if you want more information, but here it goes. Back in 2021, Biden put out an executive order to investigate the competitive practices of the Apple App Store and Android App Store. The Department of Commerce's National Telecommunication and Information Sector has released their findings from this investigation. What they find may or may not be surprising if you've been following the market for a while. So first, the published report states that the current policies for iOS and Android app stores not only harm developers but also hurts consumers. How? By inflating prices and reducing innovation. In quotes. Shocking. Crazy. Wow.
Wild.
The 50-page report references arguments that Epic made in their antitrust case against Apple and Google, and also alludes to the issues that other Goliaths like Microsoft has had trying to bring their services to mobile devices. In the report, the government agency laid out a few recommendations, and that includes increasing the resources for U.S. antitrust agencies like the DOJ and FTC, allow users to set third-party apps and marketplaces to defaults, preventing platform holders from using confidential business data to support their own competing apps, barring platform holders from requiring all developers to use their platform and in-app payment system, and greater transparency around the app review process on each platform. Sounds like some okay.
Yeah, so
ideas,
essentially
right?
this is just a play against the monopolization of like the Apple App Store, right? And
Pretty-
in the Android App Store. That's
The-
essentially the idea.
Yeah, the walled garden. Opening that up.
Yeah.
So that's just a few of them. There were more, but if you were interested in learning more, I recommend reading the report for yourself because it does seem like this impacts consumers much more than previously realized. Any opinions, Danny? What do you think? Think you can get it out?
Jack, can you hear me at all?
Push,
Yeah, we can.
push,
can hear
baby,
ya.
push.
Okay. Yeah, I now where intervention is going to be required. Google and Apple have been way too slow to make changes. It's just not going to happen. Check.
Yeah,
You
you're
guys
good.
allowed
You're
some
good.
of this
Yeah,
shit.
you're good.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, no, I just think that they've dragging their feet on it, and we're going to need an intervention at a certain point, and I hate to say it, but if they hadn't dragged their feet on it and hadn't seen the writing on the wall, they wouldn't be struggling.
Yeah, I can agree with that as well. Mendacii, you got anything for this? You got any ideas?
This shit doo doo. This suck big ball. They just like we've been hearing stories about this kind of thing for like a long time. The fact that they did drag their feet is like again why we're here. But yeah, the fact that we started off with like hearing tiny mobile game studios being like, you guys are the only place that we can do this and you take too much money, and they're like, shut up and do it or don't. We don't care. And they're just like, oh, and every judge was like, I mean, yeah, do it or don't, I guess. And it's like, well, that's how a monopoly works. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Right.
if that's what you want, like that's how you get a monopoly. And
Mhm.
you know, here we are. I call the thimble.
Yeah. So forgive me if I'm misunderstanding this. This is essentially a play against having exclusively just like an Apple App Store and an Android App Store, right? I am understanding this correctly. That's at least the
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's my understanding on it. I mean, the concept seems fine, but I definitely agree, right? I mean, this was said in like 2021. It's already been 2 years and nothing's really happened, and this has been going on for a while. This isn't anything necessarily new. Don't get me wrong. I like the ideas that they're putting in. Like I know a lot of people don't exactly like the idea of like government intervention on like the gaming industry, but I've kind of been on the opinion of like, well, if it's not getting fixed, then somebody's gonna have to do it. Like, and this clearly hasn't gotten fixed, right? I've had this same kind of opinion when it came to even the ratings board of the ESRB, right? About like, for example, loot boxes was like a major issue that never even really got, like, we still have today very weird rating issues between that. If you guys remember, there was a Peggy 3 game, FIFA, that had a literal casino in it, right? That was a whole thing that was rated ages like 3 up, right?
We
I
actually just talked about that our last episode.
Oh,
Oh,
did
yeah.
we?
Yeah.
Well, I think
Okay,
it was
yeah.
the biggest thing was like with that story was Peggy and the American equivalent weren't like
Yeah.
communicating correctly.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I don't know.
uh,
I'm on board with some amount of government regulation on it personally. I know it sucks, but at the same time, it's just not getting solved.
That's
Right?
my
It's-
thing is that like there's regulation already like there. That are supposed to be in place that are just they weren't like going through with it. Like
Yeah.
this should have been like an issue that they should have looked at years ago.
Yeah, I
yeah.
honestly completely agree. Because this has been going on for a while. This
It-
is not
to
like
m-
a recent occurrence.
Yeah, to me, it just seems like heinous oversight. You know, like it shouldn't have been.
Yeah,
Like,
it just
to the
seems like
point.
gross negligence, really.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why are these systems in place? Why are these departments of the government there if they're not going to actually like do anything that they're supposed to be doing?
No, and honestly, I completely agree. So yeah, I don't know. I like the ideas here. Don't get me wrong. I've been reading through it. I read through it the other day, and I had a couple of questions. I think I got them answered though. But I'm okay with the ideas that are in place here. It's just the matter of, are they actually going to happen, or is this just going to be another thing that carries on for multiple years and nothing occurs, right? That's where I'm at personally. And
Another
honestly,
case of
I
the
think probably
government sitting
nothing's
on their
going to
hands.
happen. Yeah, exactly. Right. This isn't the first time, and I know this has been talked about multiple times when it comes to this sort of thing, because I think this exact sort of thing got brought up, like even back when I was a co-host, like years ago. This sort of thing was brought up, and it was like, yeah, sure, they'll do something about it, and then nothing happened. So, yeah, I don't know. I would
Easy
like,
to sit on your hands when someone's rubbing your feet for you.
yeah, exactly, right. Like the argument, it's not an argument, right? But like, do you really think they're gonna do anything? Like, really? Probably not, right? They probably don't care that much. Like, I don't know, man. Is it worth going over an entire court issue with Apple and Android over this sort of thing when you know it's just gonna get long and drawn out and probably not even solved?
I can just see Apple like sending notifications to like different senators and stuff like that. But like, hey, if you want your phone to stay on, you better vote this way. You better not. You better turn the blind eye here.
Yeah,
We've got your
It'll
Google
be more
search
like-
history.
Yeah, we've got your Google search. It'll be more like, hey, so we were actually looking to make a pretty sizable donation to your super PAC, but we noticed that your last pack was actually a bit of a slush fund. That's kind of interesting. What did you do here? What's this? Where's this private jet going? But no, it like in all seriousness, like this is going to end up being something that would need to be passed probably by a Supreme Court, because I don't think it's going to go anywhere in any other court below that. And at this point in time, no sitting judge on our Supreme Court really, I think, gives two shits about this. So it's going to continue to probably remain a terrible monopoly, which really sucks for a lot of indie game developers and as well as consumers internationally that have to deal with one of these two marketplaces.
Yeah. I think one of the big points is that, at least when I was reading through this, the very first thing that caught my attention was in 2021, Biden issued this order. And it's like, we're in 2023, and has anything changed? Like, I don't think so.
So he ordered the investigation.
Sure. Yeah.
So this is the result of the investigation. This is the report.
Okay.
So a 2-year-long investigation to get to this report. So this is the juice squeezed from the fruit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of tastes like shit still, though.
Taxes. That's what they're good for.
Yeah. So it's like, what do you? Yeah.
It just seems
so
like
it's
something that's like, that's nice that you know this, but did this take this long to figure out? And
right.
Is this really where we're leaving it at?
Especially because a lot of the stuff they covered was also uncovered during a congressional hearing like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That we covered on the show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I think, it was even talked about, like, a lot of this information came from the Epic Games court case. And it's like, couldn't have got this sooner? Like, really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Gotta milk that government grant, my guy.
Yeah. I would love this to happen. They'd just be too fucking lazy, dude. I don't know what to tell you.
So anything else on that? Got anything?
No.
All right, cool. So we can go ahead and move on to deals to snag for the week. Mendacii, what do you got?
Man, what do you think I got? I got that Pathfinder hookup, baby. Yeah, Humble Bundle yet again doing a massive Pathfinder TTRPG sale. If you're part of, I don't know, the millions, hopefully, that are jumping ship from WotC Pathfinder has been doing pretty much everything that anyone should in trying to scoop up potential new players. So if you want to get into something for literally $35, the price of, by the way, like one core rule book in any other core fantasy TTRPG, you could instead get like $380 worth of materials. That's books, that's pawns to use on your virtual tabletop. You can also obviously print those out and use them in your in-person games. There's a ton of stuff there, but this does come with this little caveat here. We are Humble Bundle partners, so by clicking that link that you'll find in the show description, you will of course be helping us out a little bit, which is really nice. You know, like you didn't have to do that this close to Valentine's Day, but it's appreciated.
Help Mendacii buy a set of roses. Danny, what do you got, baby?
Okay, so I saw this on Amazon. I thought it was pretty neat. It's a no screw under desk basket for cable management. So if you're someone who doesn't like rat's nest under your desk, this is perfect. $18 on Amazon. Fantastic.
Nice, right on, dude.
And did you have anything that you wanted to scoop up?
Okay. So here's the issue, right? I couldn't find a deal, but I do have a game to recommend, and it's on a service that I think is good, right? I recommend Game Pass to most people. Just in general, I think it's a really good way to save money instead of just shelling out like $60 to play whatever new game, right? I've been playing Yakuza 0 recently, and oh my god, that game is so underrated. Oh my god.
I hope you keep playing.
Mind. Yeah, I'm all the way on the what is it, Kiwami 2? I'm already 3 games deep, and I've been enjoying it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Yakuza 0 is super underrated. Apparently it's actually a really popular game in the more like Asian regions, and not that popular in Western culture. I heavily recommend it. It's way better than it has any right to be. It really caught me off guard. I expected it to be very similar to like GTA, and I have never been more wrong about a video game in my life. I was like, oh yeah, this is probably just gonna be like a whatever game that I'm not gonna care that much about. I genuinely wish that I played this game so much sooner. I think it's that good. I think it's really, really solid. I definitely recommend it. I think a majority of the entire series is all on the Game Pass as well. So while I might not have like a game deal, I do recommend at least getting Game Pass. If you already have Game Pass, try that game. You might like it way more than you'd ever expect to. I went into it thinking I wasn't gonna like it.
Technically, it is a game deal because, like, especially if you don't have Game Pass, they always do like the first month for $1.
They do. As a matter of fact, that's actually a great point. I think on Discord, I think I got 2 months for free for Xbox Game Pass
Nitro.
PC. I do.
That's what I was gonna say too.
Discord Nitro.
That's what I was gonna say too. Is that like there's a lot of times where you'll find like a 2 or 3 month thing, for Game Pass for like $1 or even free for 3 months. You know, like I know Crunchyroll was doing it for like the first 3 months free. For the longest time, where you could just get that coupon and run Game Pass for 3 months. And even like if you want to try the ultimate version, which I mean, if you're just doing PC, you don't really need. But that's usually $1 too. So like if you have like, if you want to try the cloud gaming service and have Game Pass, the ultimate is there as well. So I mean, it's not a bad deal. I think I would constitute that as a deal to snag.
Yeah, I think it's so worth playing. It was like, it's one of the few games that I'm like really disappointed in myself that I was like, oh yeah, it's probably not that good. Like, I think I saw it along with like, it's one of those games that you see a lot, but nobody talks about. And because nobody talks about it, you think it's not gonna be that great. Like, you're like, oh, okay, nobody really talks about it, so nobody must care. And I have never been more wrong in my life. That game is so good, like surprisingly good. So yeah, heavily recommend trying it, looking into it at least. You'll definitely be caught off guard by what kind of game it is. It is not the game that you think it is. Like, you realize like 30 minutes in, like, oh, I signed up for something completely different, and I'm for it. I'm completely for it. So yeah, that's my recommendation. Personally.
Oh yeah, man. I love
Yeah.
Yakuza. Everyone needs it brightens my day every time someone else decided to check out Kiryu Kazuma and deal with Majima's wild nonsense.
I swear to God, Majima is a great character. It caught me off guard. I initially was like, I don't really care about him, and then I was like, this is my favorite character.
Yeah, and if you
This
want to do an
character is the
extra
best.
deep dive, go check
Mhm.
out the Takashi Miike take on the Yakuza movie.
Yeah.
He made a movie.
Oh
This-
my God.
It's insane. And Majima is like, what if we just plucked Majima out of the game and put him on a movie screen? It's insane. It is insane. It is awesome. But yeah,
Oh,
that's a
man.
phenomenal ask there. Just please go play Yakuza. You'll love
It's
it.
so good. It's so much better than I thought it would be. But yeah, that's my take. That's me.
All right, and then for my deal to snag this week, Blasphemous is currently on sale right now. For anyone who doesn't know what Blasphemous is, it's like imagine a Soulsborne aesthetic, but like an action platformer hack and slash game. It's very interesting. Has a very unique like art style and stuff like that for being a side scrolling. Well, I wouldn't say it's not a side scroller, but a platformer, 2D platformer. So it's on sale for 75% off. It's $6.24 on Steam, and that sale goes until February 13th.
Two
So-
things about it. One, the art is absolutely gorgeous. I'm looking at it right
Stunning.
now. It is insanely good. And two, they actually have a demo. You could try the demo for free if you want.
It
And
is
I always
brutal.
give big props to games that give demos because it feels like a lot of respect to the consumer to be like, yeah, you know what? You could try it if you want. If you don't like it, that's fine. It's cool.
If
It
you haven't-
looks really good though.
I've seen people play it. I've been meaning to pick it up, and this might be the deal that actually gets me to pull the trigger on it. I've seen a lot of people play it though,
Mhm.
and it is aggressively. I wouldn't say it's like completely Souls like in terms of
Sure.
difficulty, but it's up there, especially for a platformer game. So
Yeah, it's a
for s-
Metroidvania.
Yeah, for some reason it gives me Ninja Gaiden vibes, and I don't know if I should be getting that vibe, but I am definitely getting that vibe for some reason.
Cool. All right. Does anyone have anything else? Deals that want to talk about? Danny, you good?
I'm good.
All right.
Same.
All right. So rounding out, Ren, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you.
Of course, yeah.
Uh,
Thanks for having me, guys.
For anyone who missed it at the beginning of the show, tell us who you are, what you do, where we can find you.
Yeah,
hit it.
for sure. So, hi, I'm Ren. I'm bad at games. I play all sorts of things. I do achievement hunting. I play games that are really hard just to torture myself. It's a whole thing. You can find me at twitch.tv/Renditionzz. I'm currently playing through Dead Space right now. I'm trying to get all the achievements in it. I've already beaten one run. I still have to beat the game on hard mode with just the beginner weapon, and then I have to beat the game on the hardest difficulty. So that's what I have left. But yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It was fun. Good times.
We always appreciate having you on, baby boy.
Of
Mendacii,
course, dude.
Mendacii, what do you got going on this week?
I will be staring at pictures of Majima hiding behind things for probably the next 3 hours. But after that, I will probably go back to my playthrough of Dead Space Remake. Otherwise, I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy 14. And at some point this week, I have to sneak in some time to get in with our buddy Indy Falco 64 to check out Dark and Darker, so I can see if I actually like medieval Tarkov or not. But yeah, you can find out what I'm up to on Twitter at only Mendacii, Mendacii, and of course twitch.tv/Mendacii, spelt the same way, of course.
Cool. Danny, what do you got going on, baby boy?
Not much. Just follow me on Twitter at Danny K.
I like it. Sweet, simple, to the point.
Suffering.
Suffering, pain. I actually have been off. I haven't been streaming. I don't think I've streamed yet this year, 2023. Started the new job, and like this week is gonna be pretty busy with the job as well, but I'm gonna try to get back into like streaming soon. I've changed my layout. I got a new desk, new monitor stand, so I think I'm ready to come back. I might not be. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, you can, if I do, I'll pop it up on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Mr. Greenlee, and also on Twitch. Twitch is twitch.tv/Mr. Greenlee. All the other platforms, Mr. Greenlee. You know where to find me. OnlyFans, it's there. It's real. It's true.
It's out there. Just find
It's
it.
out there. You know? Hey. But yeah, I think that wraps up the show. Does anyone have anything else that they want to say?
Nada.
I
Alright.
think I'm good.
I mean, no.
No.
Okay, all right.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you for watching and listening. Your time and attention is always appreciated. If you made it this far, be sure to drop us a like and subscribe. That's always appreciated. Don't forget to let us know what your thoughts to any of the topics discussed in today's episode in the comments of the YouTube video, or tweet at us, and that's at NextNothingPC. But until next week, stay safe, stay healthy, keep fighting the good fights, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.
Bye.